I was a night janitor at a private Catholic high school in southern Illinois. The place was old, built in 1928, and even though it had been renovated over the years, some parts of the original structure remained untouched. Especially the basement. It was sealed off by a heavy rusted metal door at the end of a long hallway behind the old chapel. The staff called it the furnace hall, and most people didn't even know it existed. But I did, because it was part of my route. The first few weeks on the job were uneventful. Long nights, headphones in, just me and the echo of the mop bucket wheels through the halls. The whole school had a weird atmosphere at night, like it was remembering something it didn't want to. But I told myself it was just the age of the place. That changed the first time I approached the basement door. It was a quiet night around 1:30 a.m. I was mopping the back hallway when I heard something. A tap from the other side of the metal door. Just one. Then another, like someone lightly knocking from below. I froze, took my earbuds out. Tap, tap, tap. Then silence. There was no one else in the building. The teachers had gone home. Security had already done their sweep. I walked slowly toward the door, heart pounding, and placed my hand on the rusted knob. Ice cold. Then I heard it again, not a tap this time. A whisper. My name. I stepped back and left the hallway, told myself I was hearing things, that maybe it was air in the pipes or wind through the vents. But from that night on, I started noticing things around the school. Things that didn't belong. Chalk writing on blackboards in classrooms I hadn't cleaned yet. Desks slightly shifted when I returned to a room. The sound of footsteps echoing down empty hallways. And always around the same time. 1:30 to 2 a.m. One night, out of sheer frustration, I decided to report it to the head custodian. He just gave me a look, like he knew exactly what I was talking about. Then he said, "Don't open that door, no matter what you hear." He told me that back in the 1950s, when the school still used that part of the basement for storage and boiler maintenance, a student had gone missing. A freshman. He had detention and was supposed to help move boxes downstairs. He never came back. They searched for days, found nothing. But then strange things started happening. Other kids said they heard him crying through the vents, whispering to them during math class. One teacher saw him standing at the bottom of the stairwell, and then blinked, and he was gone. Eventually, they sealed the basement shut, welded the door, and let the old wing rot. I stopped asking questions after that. Until last winter, the night of a snowstorm, I was covering the full shift alone. I lost power on my floor and had to manually check the panel near the old chapel. The furnace hallway was pitch black, but I had my flashlight. As I passed the basement door, I noticed it was open about 3 inches. I froze. Then very faintly, I heard crying. It was a boy. Sobbing softly. Against everything I knew, I stepped forward and pulled the door open. My flashlight cut through the dust and darkness. Stone steps led down into pitch black. The crying stopped instantly. But something else started. A shuffling sound. Slow, dragging. Coming up the steps. I stepped back. Then I saw it. Just for a second, a boy, standing halfway up the stairs. But he wasn't standing on the steps. He was floating slightly above them. His head tilted too far, eyes pitch black, mouth open. And then the flashlight died. I don't remember running. I only remember slamming the chapel door behind me and locking it. When the power came back on an hour later, the basement door was sealed shut again. No one believed me, but I never walked down that hall again. They say schools are built to hold knowledge, but sometimes they hold the dead too. And some doors, they were never meant to be opened. Back in 2014, I worked as a substitute teacher in a small public middle school just outside Atlanta. I was 23, fresh out of college with an English degree I wasn't using, and had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. Subbing wasn't my dream job. It barely paid rent, but it filled the days. Most of the time, I was sent to quiet schools and babysat bored classrooms. But then, I got called to replace a music teacher who'd taken medical leave for the week. Room M. That was the first and last time I stepped into it. The school wasn't old, not by Southern standards, built in the late 60s, but it had a weird feel to it, like it had settled into itself a little too deeply. The floors groaned when no one was walking. The walls hummed even when no lights were on. And Room M was tucked in the furthest wing, a narrow, dim hallway that felt colder than the rest of the building. The music room was large, with dusty soundproof panels, a whiteboard warped with age, and a grand piano in the far corner, covered in a cloth. The moment I walked in, I felt something off. Not evil, not even threatening. Just watched. On my first day, one of the girls, Tasha, lingered after class. She walked up while I was erasing the board and said, "If you hear the humming, don't follow it." I turned around, confused, but she had already left. Later, while doing roll call in fourth period, I noticed that the last name, Clara, was always marked absent on the sheet. I asked the class if she had moved. Everyone fell silent. Then a kid in the back said, "She's still here. She just doesn't raise her hand anymore." They all laughed, the forced kind of laugh kids do when they're scared. By Wednesday, strange things started happening. During third period, while the students were working on percussion drills, the metronome on the teacher's desk started ticking, slowly at first, then speeding up. I hadn't touched it. No one had. It had no batteries inside, I checked. It clicked faster and faster, until one of the kids knocked it off the desk in panic. It stopped the moment it hit the floor. That night, I stayed behind to organize old sheet music left in a locked cabinet. As I flipped through faded scores, I heard a soft note from behind me. I turned. The piano, the one covered in the corner, was now open. A single key was pressed down. Just one. The air in the room had dropped. I could see my breath even though the heater outside the room was on. And then so faint I thought I imagined it. I heard someone humming, not just any tune, a lullaby, low, slow, almost like it was being sung just under their breath. I backed out of the room and locked the door behind me. The next day I confronted the janitor, a man named Davis who'd worked there for 30 years. He didn't look surprised. He just said, "You shouldn't be in there after 3 p.m. I asked why. He told me a story. In 1998, a girl named Clara, a music prodigy, had stayed late to practice for the winter recital. The teacher had stepped out to take a call. When she came back, Clara was still sitting at the piano, but not moving. She had died sitting upright. No injury, no sign of trauma. Just still. A few weeks later, kids started hearing music coming from the locked room after hours. Humming, a soft piano tune. One night, the vice principal stayed behind to prove it was nonsense. He never talked about what he heard. But the next day, he transferred out of the district. On Friday, I returned one last time to collect a jacket I had left behind. The sun had just set. The hallway lights flickered as I reached room M. The door was already ajar. Inside, the piano bench was pulled out. The metronome was ticking again. I didn't touch anything. I just grabbed my jacket and turned to leave. Then I heard it. A voice, a soft girl's voice behind me. She whispered, "I'm still practicing." I turned around, fast, and saw the reflection of the piano in the black window glass. Someone was sitting at it, but when I looked back at the piano itself, it was empty. I left that night and never went back. Months later, I stumbled across a paranormal investigation video. Title, "The Haunted Music Room of Atlanta." They had stayed overnight in the school. The clip shows their audio recorder picking up faint piano notes and a voice saying, "Don't make me stop." It matched what I heard. And right before the video ends, you can hear it again. Click, click, click. The metronome. still ticking. When I was 15, our school started renovating the old gym building, the one no one used anymore. It had been closed for years after a pipe burst and flooded the entire lower level. Most of the newer students didn't even know it existed, but some of the older teachers remembered. They called it the West Wing. You weren't allowed near it. Fences blocked the hallway. The doors were sealed shut. But that didn't stop the stories. There were rumors, of course. Every school has them. Ours centered around one thing: Locker 119. It was always the same story. A student locked themselves inside and was never found. Some said it happened in the 70s, others said in the early 90s. The name changed depending on who told it, but the ending was always the same. They opened Locker 119 and it was empty, but something stepped out. I never believed any of it, until my friend Marcus stole the janitor's keys. It was a Friday, right before winter break. We were bored, unsupervised, and stupid. Marcus found the ring of keys on a chair outside the main office and thought it would be funny to sneak into the old wing and find the haunted locker. I told him it was a bad idea. He laughed, said, "Ghosts can't open lockers." Turns out, they don't have to. That night, 4 of us stayed behind after the building cleared out. We snuck through a side door, past the old science wing, and reached the locked metal gate that led to the west wing. Marcus tried every key until one finally clicked. The hallway beyond was freezing, dark, narrow, and dripping in places. Paint peeled from the walls like old skin. The smell of mildew and rust filled the air. Our phone flashlights barely cut through the dark, but enough to see the lockers still lining both walls. Some dented, some scratched, all covered in dust. We split up pretending to search. It was a joke at first. Then I heard Marcus say, "Found it. Locker 119. It looked like the others except for one thing. It had no lock. The latch hung slightly open, like someone had just closed it." Marcus, grinning like an idiot, said, "Guess this is where the screaming starts." He yanked the door open. Nothing inside. We laughed. Then the lights in the hallway flickered. Not the flashlights, the actual overhead lights. The ones that weren't supposed to have power. They buzzed, flashed white then dim yellow, one by one, like a wave heading toward us. Then silence. We all looked at Marcus. His face had gone pale. He was staring into the locker, unmoving. I asked, "Dude, what is it?" He didn't answer. Then he whispered, "She's still in there." I walked over, looked inside. Nothing. But Marcus stepped backward, eyes wide, whispering to himself. He dropped the key ring, backed into the opposite wall. We all started panicking, told him to snap out of it, but he kept whispering. I can hear her breathing. We grabbed him and ran. It took both of us to pull him out of the hallway. He was ice cold, shaking. When we got back into the main wing, the lights were fine. The heat was on. Everything was normal. Except Marcus. He wouldn't talk for the rest of the night. The next day he didn't come to school. Monday either. On Tuesday we heard he was in the hospital. He wasn't speaking, not eating, just staring at the wall and muttering the same thing. "Don't open it again, don't open it again." The school locked down the West Wing again, fenced it off tighter, said there had been vandalism but no one got in trouble. The janitor's keys were never recovered. Years later I went back, just out of curiosity. I walked the edge of the school's west lot where the old gym windows used to be boarded up. They were open now. New glass, clean halls. The school had remodeled that entire wing. Except, right above the new locker rose was a small bronze plaque, mounted flush with the wall. It read, "In memory of those who remain." And in the reflection of the glass, I swear I saw Marcus, standing at locker 119, smiling. If you made it this far, thank you for spending your night with us. If these stories gave you chills, there's plenty more waiting. Don't forget to subscribe to Night Fear Stories for new terrifying tales every single night. Sleep well. If you can,